And it was kind of funny. I'd forgotten. You just brought up a moment ago that first workshop that really I think AFI did was with the city of Olathe.
Oh yeah, it was really grateful for talking about innovation and leadership. Michael being willing to hold the space for his team as well as the AFI team to explore the future and fine tune some things. It made a real difference in how we serve now. So
Yeah, for sure. And that gives me a good opportunity to introduce our guest, who is Michael Wilkes, the city manager for 27 years of Olathe, Kansas. And Michael has recently announced his retirement. And I am really anxious to get a chance to visit with Michael. And I was just going to tell you this, Michael. I probably have mentioned this to you before, but my first real connection with you was when uh, we started having conversations about SGR becoming the managing company, so to speak, of AFI. And you were at the time the chairman of the board. And I've been through enough different kind of leadership transitions and stuff. You always know that person can either be a real difficult person or they can be a godsend. And I have been so impressed and so appreciative from the very beginning. What a blessing you've been to work with, and a godsend and more from helping make that transition. And we have a long way to go with AFI. We know that and everything, but we certainly wouldn't be where we are right now if it weren't for your great leadership and your style of leadership and the person that you are. So thank you for that. And congratulations on your upcoming retirement, although I know you don't have an exact date.
Yeah.
How do you feel as you're looking forward to this?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say something. First of all, happy to be here. Honored and privileged to get the invitation to speak. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today. Second thing, I just want to touch on, Mike, what you were talking about. Yeah, I was on the board of the Alliance for Innovation for probably about 15 or 16 years. A lot of that stuff's in my blood. I'm very, very passionate about it. And so, it was a very important thing to me to get to a point where we were going to be able to pass the baton for AFI onto an organization that had as much passion about it, and that it not just die, because I think it's something that's very important to local governments. And so, I, hats off to you guys and to Ron and for picking up the torch, and Darren now, and you guys carrying it on, because I do think it's an incredibly important thing in local government. Now on to my retirement. Boy, I tell you, I don't, people keep asking, I keep telling people I am looking forward to it. I'm also scared to death about it. And so, but I keep telling my wife at home, nobody's ever that has ever retired has come up to me at some point in time and go, this really stinks. This retirement thing is really just for the birds. So I keep holding on to that,
There you
right?
go. Yeah, oh, yeah. I think you'll do great at it, and we really are so excited to kind of hear lessons from your career, and especially about I appreciate you saying this about AFI because I think Olathe has been one of those leading cities, and you have been a key leader in this of great leadership mixed with great innovation. And so we want to make sure as we go along, we uncover some of the secrets of that. But I want to start. You've been there 27 years, but you had a career before that.
Yeah.
And so talk to us about that and kind of lead us up to what was before and what led to you becoming city manager in
Yeah.
Olathe, Kansas.
Yeah, so Mike, I was the young guy who had his life all planned out. I was that guy, right? And so I had been involved in student government, all the way from when I was in the sixth grade. I was the sixth grade class president. So it was just a thing as I went through junior high and high school, and always kind of fascinated by the governance process. And so pretty early on, even in high school, I decided, hey, I'm going to go to law school and I'm going to get into politics because that's really what I want to do. And so I went to school and really kind of was involved in political science, got involved in public administration, and kind of was like, hey, this is kind of cool. I didn't know much about it. So I thought, hey, you know what? I wanted to prolong the not adulting, so I decided I'd go to graduate school before I went to law school. So I went to graduate school, worked on my master's in public administration, and really kind of that's where it kind of hit me. Hey,
Mhm.
this is it. Okay, because this is the convergence of the politics piece that I was really thinking I wanted to do, and the leadership piece that was really intriguing me. So I thought, this is cool. So of course I got my master's, come out with a master's, and I'm like, okay, who's gonna hire me? I'm ready. And nobody wanted
Nobody
was
wanted you.
to hire
What?
me. So
They just
so
didn't know.
yeah, so I went to Oregon. I was in Atlanta at the time, went to Oregon, did an internship, full year internship. And then I kind of, the thing I loved about the internship is I got a rotation in the budget office.
Mhm.
And to me, budget just kind of piqued my interest. I guess I kind of made up my mind at that point in time that I wanted to be a manager. That I thought that's the most important policy document that I'll ever do anywhere I go. And I want to be the guy that understands it. I don't want to have to rely on the finance person or the budget person to tell me about our finances and about our budget. I want to be able to understand it. So I kind of decided I'd take a budget path, went to the city of Eugene, Oregon, which was a fantastic experience for me. Mid 80s, Eugene, not taking anything away from them now, but in the mid 80s, Eugene was absolutely a hotbed of innovation. And Mike Gleason, who was the city manager, was a servant leader. He was an awesome, awesome guy. I learned a lot from him in the budget office. Then I got an opportunity to go back home and work for Gwinnett County, Georgia. Started as their budget manager, worked my way up to assistant county manager, and then I became a city manager in Alpharetta, Georgia, and then I came here 6 years after that. So, and the rest has been history.
Yeah, that's great. Halson, I'll let you jump in here.
Yeah, yeah, I love that explore. Like, that's an interesting path of like budget. This is the most important document. I guess what have you learned about like leadership and innovation at that on that budget journey
Yeah.
to becoming a survey like that prepared you to serve as a city manager in your
Yeah,
capacity?
so I would say to me, I've always been kind of two things that have been important to me that have driven, I guess, my quest on innovation and leadership. And that is, I have by nature kind of I'm curious about things. I ask a lot of questions. I'm not a detail person, but I am kind of a vision person. And so I tend to be very curious about things. I also tend to be kind of a tinkerer. I've been called a tinkerer before. And so I'm never been afraid of trying something new, whether that's, working on my car when I was in high school and making it do things that I wanted it to do, or on my motorcycle or whatever. And so that just kind of flowed into my work career, if you will, because I was always, I guess the other thing that probably has driven me about it, and I did a speech on this one time for ICMA years ago. I I hated the phrase good enough for government work, which was a big
Mhm.
phrase when I was younger, right? And I took great offense to that, right? Because I always felt like, what are you talking about? People that do work in government are some of the brightest, most innovative, I mean, those are people that it's not easy. The work that we do is not easy. It's complex, it's complicated. You got really complex problems. So I kind of always wore that as like almost like a red badge of courage. I am determined to make sure people understand that you do have to be good enough to work in government. you know. And so that's a challenge. And so that kind of all that combined, I think really have led me to the path that, and I guess if there was another thing, my personality type is kind of the D-driven, guy. And so extremely competitive, so a lot of things are very natural to me that, I see somebody doing something, I think we can do it better. Let's do it better, and so a lot of that stuff. And obviously that then leads to development of culture, which I personally believe, and even when I was on the AFI board, I was always an advocate that you cannot have an innovative organization without a culture that allows risk taking, a culture that's curious, a culture that is empowering people, that has servant leaders in the organization. So culture, I believe it all begins with the culture that you create and the environment that you create with the people and give them the power to do what they do best, right? So,
Yeah, I love what you're saying about it. It's not that phrase good enough for government work. I'm saying it really gets on me. In fact, sometimes I say, based on the way I see some cities operate, instead of saying we ought to operate government like a business, there are a lot of business owners that ought to operate their business like a city, just
yeah,
to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
uh, it's great. You didn't have a long time in your career where you had other people supervising you because you became a city manager fairly young. So
yeah.
so I want to ask you though, who are some of the mentors? Maybe they were supervisors, maybe they were colleagues, who have had a really big impact on you and your leadership philosophy, your leadership style.
Yeah. Yeah, it's three people come to mind. One was I mentioned him already, Mike Gleason, who was the city manager in Eugene when I was there. I didn't have a lot of interaction with him, being in the budget office as a budget analyst, but I had enough to see that he surrounded himself with really smart people. He relied on those people and was very innovative in some of the things that Eugene was doing at the time. So he was the first one where I really kind of caught that vision. The other two people were both in Gwinnett County in Georgia. One of them was the county manager at the time. His name was Chuck Button, very much a servant leader, very, poured into his people, really relied on his people. And I learned a lot from him and still a mentor of mine today. I see him at every ICMA conference and he always asks me how are we doing and all that stuff. And the third person would be Charlotte Nash, who recruited me to Johnson or to Gwinnett County as a budget manager. She was the finance director at the time, later became the county manager. And the thing I loved about Charlotte is Charlotte was very early on asked me what I wanted to do. I was very young, asked me what I wanted to do. And so she never forgot that. So later on, when Chuck Button, as the county manager, needed some help, but we couldn't really add a position, she said, how about if I loan you Michael Wilkes and I'll loan him to you for a while? Because she knew where I wanted to go and she gave me the opportunity to do it. And so, those three people have been very, very important to me and very instrumental. And I owe them all three a lot. I hope they're all on here, but
I love stories like that because we never know the impact we're having when we pour into somebody else or give them an open avenue to do something that's in their heart. And boy, you're a prime example of that.
Yeah, really, it's really the shoulders that we stand on, for sure. I'm curious. Um, I don't think you're the type of leader to say when you accomplish something, you did it alone. So definitely acknowledging a lot of great people played a role
sure.
when it comes to achievement in the city of Olathe. But I'd love to hear some of the accomplishments you're most proud of, whether it be culture, like you mentioned, like how core that is to innovation, or something else. What are you most proud of in your time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as I as I look to the end. I've got reporters asking me those same kind of things and all. And it's interesting because I have several picked plaques, not plaques, but like pictorial graphs of things that hang in my office at work, I mean at home, that I've been given over the 27 years on various anniversaries of all the things that we've built and all the things that we've done. And those are all great. And but it really, to me, if I look back on what am I most proud of in 27 years in Olathe, Kansas, is the culture of excellence that we have built in this organization. That was really kind of what I remember when I came here 27 years ago. And again, Mike, I don't want to go back on this, but I told you I was always the guy with goals, right? So my goal as a young person was I was going to be the city manager of a metropolitan suburban city with a population of 100,000 population before I was 40 years old. So I came to Olathe, Kansas, 99,000 when I was 39 years old. So,
Yeah,
so, so,
there's something to be said for that.
something to be said for goals. But,
That's right.
but what part of what I saw when I came here was an organization that had what I refer to as a lot of good bones. We had really, really good people. We were beginning to do some really cool things. The city honestly had just lacked leadership. I mean, I think they had been through, like when I got here, they'd been through like 4 city managers in like 7 years. And so it was almost like this revolving, but and bless their hearts, I remember when I met with the department directors individually when I first got here, I had some of them that I just felt like they're looking right through me, right? It's like, okay, how long are you going to be here? I mean, I'll still be here when you're gone, you know, and that's a challenge, right? But I was intent on, because I really felt like we had the potential of building something really great here. We had a council that wanted to do something different, that really bought into some of the things that we were doing, and that gave us the ability to do it. And over the years, like you said, Housen, I mean, I could name a lot of people that have been with me and been with me through this and have kind of helped build what we've built. But you know, the cult, I don't. I'm always. It's funny. We do some onboarding work here, and the city manager has its own onboarding class, and we play some games just trying to get some things. And one of the things we do is ask everybody what the vision statement is, and we give them multiple choice. And almost every time we do this 3 times a year, and these are new employees, right? And so almost every one of them is almost like 99% get it right. They know the vision, they know what we're about, they know that we're about excellence, and that's what the expectation is when you come here. And so, yeah, we're going to look for new ways to do things. Yeah, we're going to look for better ways to do things. Yeah, we're going to, one of my former mayors used to say, we're going to do research and development, which is rip off and duplicate. Going to find who's doing it right, and we're going to make it better, and that's part. You set that level of expectation, you empower the people, you support the people, you allow them to take what we call smart risks, and people don't get punished when we make mistakes, and we learn from them and we move on. And that's the thing I'll be most proud of when I walk out the door is the culture that we've created in the organization.
I love that, Michael, because I would say, you hear different things about different cities, and when you think of Olathe, you think of great culture. And so that really resonates with me, what you're talking about. And I appreciate the long commitment to it too. You don't build that overnight.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. That's I guess that's one thing. Um, it's I can tell you at the end of my career, I can look back and sit here and go, I didn't come here thinking I'd be here for 27 years. That was not my intention. But I wouldn't trade it for the world, because some of the things that we've done take time. And I guess that's the one thing I'd say to everybody out there, no matter, you may not be able to be there for 27 years, you may be there for 5 years or 6 years or whatever, but I think you have to look at culture as a journey. It is not a destination, it is a journey, right? So even if you don't get the opportunity to be there 27 years, what can you do to contribute to building a better culture and a better workplace where people can thrive and do their best work? What's your part in that, even if that's 5 years or, whatever, 4 years or whatever. So that's just a piece too.
That's a great point because I just finished reading a book that is kind of a funny book. It's called Let Them Lead, and it's about a high school hockey team back in the early part of the 2000s that had a really bad record. A new coach came in and they turned things around and they didn't win a championship while he was there, but they really set things in motion. But what was really interesting to me about the book was he found ways to celebrate every single team and they marked it. So like this team was the first team to have a winning record in X number of years. And then the
Yeah.
next year he awarded that team another recognition. And I think we forget to do that sometimes in our organizations that along that journey, you've got to mark some wins.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One of the things that we did very early on was we started a citizen satisfaction survey, and at the time, I mean, we really did it right out of the gate. It was one of the first things I did, and worked with a local firm here that now does these all over the world, actually. And at the time, we did them once a year, but now we do them quarterly because it gives us real-time information on how are we doing and allows us. The thing about doing it every year is if we make a change, it takes us a year to find out if it did any good, and now we have information quarterly and we can make that change. But anyway, I say all that to say years ago, then we also decided, hey, you know what we need to do? If we're going to make excellence a priority and achievement, what I talk about our culture all the time as an organization. I say we're going to be three things as an organization. We're going to be values based, we're going to be customer focused, and we're going to be metric driven. And metric driven is that last piece. Look, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm one of those guys. Everybody don't get a trophy. That ain't how the world works, right? It's a competition, right? And people choose to live in your community or they choose not to live in your community. And that's based on the service that you provided. So we decided a long time ago, if these things are important, if this survey is important to us, we're going to bonus our employees. If we achieve the results that we get. So kind of like you said, every year we would do we still do it. We do a big celebration. We call it the Direction Finder Reveal, and it's revealing our annual results. And so all of our employees understand the goals that we have, the targets that we have in those measures, what's in it for them. And what's in it for them is a bonus every year if we achieve. And I'm not talking about, I mean, over time our standards developed as well, because at first we just kind of want, let's be in the top 25% of all the people, and what I would always tell our people is I said, hey, listen, you got to understand the people that are doing these kind of surveys really are the local governments that want to be better, right? Because if you don't want to be better, you ain't asking the question about how are you doing, right? So I said, so at first we want to be in 25. Well, now it's like we get a bonus if we are number one in the nation in that category for that year, or we're in the top 5% of local governments, right? And so part of what we do too is if we're not number one, we want to know, we ask who is number one and can we go there and find out what they're doing to get us number one. And so again, that's just all some of the stuff that we do that creates the environment to, so then people are looking for, gosh, how can we do this better? How can we make this program better? How, what's a new thing that we can do to put ourselves in a better position with our customers,
What you're pointing out is that a great culture is not just warm fuzzies and touchy feelies. Great culture includes metrics
Yeah.
and knowing when we win. All right, let me change the direction a little bit with you though. So
Hey,
we learn from our successes, but it's often been said we learn a little bit more from our failures. So
Yeah.
I want to ask you to pull the curtain back a little bit. And what are some of the things that haven't gone well for you? And what did you learn, or what did your organization learn from those things?
Yeah, so I I would say, as hard as it is for me to say this, probably the thing that comes to mind um, back years ago, kind of AFR was doing a lot of work on innovation teams, and so we stood up an innovation team specifically in the organization. Um, honestly, did not do a lot of pre-work in terms of personality types, which I'll get to in a minute, right? But so we took applications from throughout the organization. They had to be below director level. Didn't want anybody director level or above to be on the innovation team. And and so we put together this, we interviewed people in the city manager's office, we interviewed them, and then we handpicked these people, right? And so we want to do great things with this innovation team. And so I am a huge ambiguity guy. Okay. I work really, really well with a high degree of ambiguity. And sometimes I forget that everybody doesn't do that very well. And so we had a lot of ambiguity associated with this team. We didn't really tell them what to do, what their goals were, I mean, we kind of just said, okay, you're an innovation team. Your job is to go out there and do an assessment of the organization and figure out what you want to do and jump on it, right? And there's no timetable, there's no nothing. They struggled mightily, right? And we tried coaching them up. We tried doing a lot of things. I think personality type, and the reason I mentioned that, there weren't a lot of whatever you want to call them, D's or drivers or whatever in the group. We ended up with a lot of analyst type folks. And you get a lot of those in government. And so they tended to just kind of they could never get their, and I'm not being critical of personality types or anything. I'm just telling you kind of what we went through. And so we probably didn't spend enough time in the beginning talking about, the different personality types and how they make up teams and how a team works and all. We kind of just took them up to the 20-foot diving board and shoved them off. And that didn't really work for us. So,
Very interesting. Yeah.
I think we learned a lot through that. And I think, to be honest, one of the things, and I had struggled with this a little bit before, I've never been, we have never had a chief innovation officer in our organization. The whole innovation team, I struggled with that a little bit too, because I've always wanted innovation to be organic throughout the organization. I've always felt like if you have a chief innovation officer or an innovation team, that you're giving everybody else in the organization a pass on
Mm,
innovation. And we try to create a culture. Part of our culture is we talk about everybody's a leader, right? So everybody has those leadership responsibility, and part of that's innovation, part of that's mentoring, part of that's, all of that servant leadership stuff. And we talk about that. So again, those are some of the lessons. We never created another innovation team. We didn't do an innovation officer and all, just trying to build the culture. But that's one of our that was a big mistake.
well,
But we
thanks for
learned some lessons from it. So
thanks for your transparency. I think it's
yeah,
very helpful for people to learn.
Yeah, I like that. It's kind of this. It's like it's woven into the culture, and everyone is feels empowered to innovate rather than the
yeah,
kind of centralized. All right, you go do that.
yeah.
Um, yeah, man. I'm just like, I really love that framing of culture as a journey. And it sounds like where you landed was like values aligned, metric driven. Um, and I guess like in service of the folks watching, right? If you had to try to do it over again, what would you do more of to create a culture along that line? Like maybe can't rush perfection
Yeah,
or
yeah,
innovation, right? But what would you do more of and what would you do less of, right? Or are there things that you
yeah.
did or maybe practices or process that you would, in hindsight, recognize as strategic or significant, maybe even more in now
Yeah,
that you're reflecting on it?
part of me says, and I think this is a lesson. I would suggest this a lesson for everybody. And this is the third time I've mentioned personality style, but I'm going to just get on that a little bit because I would say if I had my, city manager life to lead over again, I would try to pour into people more than I did. Okay. That's not necessarily, again, as a kind of a D personality, unfortunately, my natural tendencies are more Conan the Barbarian as opposed to, you know, kill and destroy everything in front of me and not worry too much about the wake behind me. And I will say that that's something I've learned, and as I've matured, I've done much better at that. But if I had to start all over again, I'd start that off back here as opposed to midstream somewhere, trying to be more of that. Uh, and again, I think part of what I was going to say is part of the lesson in there for everybody is, we all got, all of us, I think, especially from a leadership perspective, you have to stretch yourself into places that aren't necessarily your go-to place and they aren't necessarily your comfort zone. But you have to be able to call on all those parts to be what your people need you to be, right? And so again, that's kind of my thought on that. I'd probably do that a little bit better than I have and get to it a little bit earlier in my career than I did.
Mm,
So,
that's fascinating. Uh, Talk a little bit about this role as a city manager, Michael, because we're seeing this trend where it seems like there's fewer men and women that want to move into that position of being the city manager. And I'm wondering what would you say to someone who's maybe thinking they might want to go that route, but they're not sure? What would you say to them?
what I would say to him, Mike, is I don't believe that there is well, yeah, I'm going to say I don't believe there's a harder job in the world, but I don't believe that there's a more rewarding job in the world, than being a city manager. And you um, w yeah, I mean that's a lot in there, but it's a
Yeah.
hard job. It is a incredibly hard job, and I do believe that I'll tell you. Here's a little story, and I swore to never be this guy, and I'm not going to name this guy, but um, I remember back in my career early on. Um, I had there was we had hired in this particular place I was in, we had hired an interim manager. And so this person had been a long, long time manager in another jurisdiction. And he was probably about my age now when I encountered him in my mid 30s. And I remember when he first started, I was in the manager's office. Yeah, wasn't the manager. And he called me in to his office one day. I mean, this was like first week he's there. And so he asked me kind of what my plans were for the future. So I'm sitting there, I'm giving him my, city manager of a major metropolitan city
I've
with
got
a
my
hundred thousand
goals.
places. By the time I'm 30, by the time I'm 40 years old, I'm giving him that, man. I got it all, man. I'm fired up. And he looks across the desk and says to me, I don't know why anyone in the world would want to be in this job and in this seat.
Mm.
And I swore to myself that I would never be that guy, right? I am never going to be that guy. Look, it is hard. It is an incredibly hard job. But again, there is no more rewarding work. I mean, there is, whether it's about culture, whether it's about community building, or whether it's about, the whole Athenian leaving the community in a better place than when you got here, and doing all the things, right things for the right reason, and being part of the solution and not part of the problem. I could go on and on and on. But, the one thing I think is, if there are people out there, and especially young people, that want their work to matter and
Mhm.
want to have purpose in what they do at the end of the day, and not feel like they're just building widgets or working for the man, or whatever if you want to feel like you have purpose in what you're doing, there is absolutely no better thing to do than being a city manager, and step up to the plate and put on your big boy pants or your big girl pants, and do the job. Yeah, it's a challenging job, but it is incredibly rewarding. And I mean, I look back on, the legacy that I'll leave. I am extremely proud of what I've accomplished, not just in Olathe, Kansas, but throughout my career. I got I got no regrets. I was telling my wife this the other day. My only regret is that I'm getting old and slowing down and can't do it another 20 years. I mean, that's my regret, I wouldn't swap it for anything. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I would encourage anything, or anybody, if you're thinking about it, jump in the pool.
Yeah, we
Jump in
need
the
you.
pool.
We need
Love
you.
that.
Well, I know we got to wrap things up pretty quick. Maybe we've got time for a couple more questions. Halson, I'll give you one, and then I'll take the last.
Oh my gosh, thank you. It was burning. It was burning in me.
Okay.
Uh, so if I'm just looking forward, right? I think you've got a lot of experience as a city manager, 27 years, almost 30, right? Now looking forward, maybe 30 years, like are there any like challenges that you see for the city manager profession in to come, like any that you suspect like it's not too bad now, but in a few decades it could become a real wicked problem for the profession. Like what might some of those, what's like a challenge that you see coming and how might you respond? Like how should folks respond to that challenge?
Yeah, and so I almost hesitate to answer that question based on my answer to the last question, because I don't want to discourage anybody from doing the job. But like I said,
Hard, and
go
it's
back
going to
to
get
my
harder.
last answer. It's a hard job. Um, I and I don't want to sound cliche-ish, but it is I think it is what's on everybody's mind. Um, if I look at city councils today, and I have a great, great city council. Would not I love every one of them, personal friends with all of them. But councils are becoming more and more a microcosm of national politics. And that's a scary situation, for a guy that's always, I have there has not been in all my, let's say I've been a city manager for 33 years, all told, right? So in every time I've done a council retreat, which is after every election, so I've done a bunch of them, I always say to the city council, hey, I want to just remind everybody, we do roads, water, sewer, snow removal, police, and fire, right? That's what we do, right? We don't do all that other stuff that people tend to worry about a lot. We don't do that stuff. We do this stuff. And if we do this stuff really, really, really good and really, really well, then we've created a tremendously high quality of life for the residents that live here, and they're going to be happy about the place they live in, right? But unfortunately, I think those politics, I'll just say, those issues are becoming more and more, more and more of an issue in at local government levels. And I think that complicates it for managers, and you have to try. And I think, again, I think we have to continue to come back to what's our job? The 155,000 people that live in this city are expecting what from us? Are they expecting us to worry about that issue? I won't even name those because I don't want to, upset anybody. But are they worried about those things? Or are they worried about us patching their potholes? Are they worried about making sure that we're plowing snow so they can get to work, on January the 5th, Um, and so it's tough. And I unfortunately, over my career, I can look back and see how that's crept in to local government conversations. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to go away. So I think the challenge for managers in the future is how to navigate that. How do you navigate that and continue to provide the services that people want and are relying on us to do each and every day, and not get sidetracked with the things that, you know, aren't as important, to be perfectly honest, to those people.
You know, I think you're touching on such an important thing, and I've heard Ron Holifield talk so many times about the fact that the council manager form of government was a reform movement from the very beginning, which of
Yep.
course, there in the Kansas City area, every time you
Yep.
pull out of the airport, you're reminded of
Right.
I think it's Cookingham Boulevard,
Yeah.
who was such
Yep.
an innovative leader, a pioneer in that area. And it's going to call for statesmanship at the
It
city
is.
position. And that's not an impossibility. It's
No.
hard, but it's not impossible. And I think people like you and others who have carried that torch will be an inspiration to the people that come behind you that will need to rise up to the challenge that they face.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're going to stand on your shoulders and the shoulders of others to do it. And it's tough, but I have
Yeah.
confidence that it can happen
Yeah.
for sure. And
Absolutely. Me too.
we've got to wrap it up a little bit, but Michael, we would be remiss if we didn't ask, okay, what's next for Michael Wilkes? So l- let us in on where you headed next. What's next for you?
Well, I'm gonna ride my Harley Davidson.
Don't
I
hurt
got some.
yourself. Don't hurt
I,
yourself anymore.
I've got some, I got a list of about three big remodeling projects at home that I got to do that are on the list. And then I'm just going to wait for the phone to call or phone to ring, right?
Uh,
So we'll
man,
see. I got a few things to keep me busy for a while. And so my wife keeps my wife, who was a psychology major and worked in social work all of her life, continues to show me these studies of the people the men especially, that retire and have no purpose in retirement, that die within 12 months. And so she says, this is not going to be you. You can go find something to do.
yeah, there you go. Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking time to visit with us. It's been a rich interview. Really appreciate you this time, but especially your leadership in local government
Thank
and
you.
throughout the nation. So we really wish you the best. We'll stay in close touch, I hope. And we are really proud to be partners with you in what you're doing in local government.
Well, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been great. And so
Thanks,
just
Michael.
want to say to everyone that's been watching, hope that you've enjoyed it. And we want to wish you the best. Thanks, Halson, for making time to be a part of this, and Lisa Shook, who is doing the work behind the scenes. We really appreciate you. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week.